Hi, this is Gavin from Bright Minds Tutoring, and today we're going to be going over the basics of functions. So a function, at its simplistic, is each input, which we're going to call x, has its own output, which we're going to call y. Now, this is going to become a lot more important later, but for now, just keep that in mind. So let's look at these graphs. So in this first chart, we have 1, 2, and 5 as our x. Now, if you look across at the y's, each of them has their own y. So for 1, we have 1, for 2 we have 3, and for 5 we have 6. So you can see there that each x has its own output. On the second graph here, see that there's two 2's. Now remember at the top it has that each input has to have its own output. So since this 2 is on here twice, it has to equal the same thing. So since this 2 equals 4 and also 5, this cannot work, so this is not a function. And then if you look at this last graph, we have 1, 2, and 4. But 1 and 2 each equal y. Well, that's okay because each input, 1 and 2, have their own output, 1 and 1, which means that this graph is a function. Graphing functions. Now to start, we have a table here. It has 3 x's and 3 y's. So we start by looking at this x, which is 1. So we come over here to this graph. Now on the graph, there are going to be 2 axes. There's going to be an x and a y. This horizontal line is always going to be your x, and this vertical line is always going to be your y. So we start, you got your x equals 1, so we find your 1. So you know that the point is going to be somewhere here. And then you look at your y, which equals 2, so you know that your point's going to be at 2. So you bring those two together, and you get a point at 1, 2. Now for your second point, you find 3 on your graph, which is right here. Your y equals 4, so you find your 4. Bring those together, and you get 3, 4. And then for this last one at 5, 6, find your 5, find your 6, bring them together, and you got your last point. Now you might notice that these 3 points make a line. There's actually a formula for this line that we call slope, which is y equals mx plus b. Now in this formula, the slope is really just this m. And you might recognize your y and your x as being from this table. So in order to find your slope, you need to find your rise over your run. Now a good way to remember this is thinking about getting out of bed. When you get out of bed, you get to rise out of your bed before you can run. So if you look back at this, you rise before you run. So you're at the point 5, 6, and 3, 4. Now if we look at the distance from those points going vertically and horizontally, we go up 1, 2, and we're going over 1, 2. So our rise over 1 will be you're going up 2 and over 2, which that simplifies to 1. So your slope in this case is going to be 1. So if we plug this back into the formula, your y equals 1x plus b. Now that we know that our slope is 1, we can look back at our graph and look at this leftmost point at 1, 2. If we're going up 1 over 1, we can also go down 1, back 1. So this way we can find that our graph intersects our y-axis at 0, 1. So our y-intercept, in this case, is going to be the y, which is 1. So your formula for this equation, or function I should say, is y equals 1x plus 1.